The new Abyssal Mask is really broken on a lot of champs right now. Kai'Sa has a new build that's bringing her way more power, and this new rune setup for Kassadin gives him even more mobility. We have all this and much more to cover in today's video as we bring you guys 10 of the most OP new builds and rune setups for S1.2. And do you remember when knowing how to set up a freeze in low elo made you special? These days, you're considered a troll if you don't know what a freeze is. Problem is, challengers are so out of touch with the fact that everyone in low elo has improved, so if you ask for help, you just keep getting the same outdated advice. Or even worse, they give you tips that only work in high elo, like how you should sync up your wave crashes with your teammates in multiple lanes to set up invades or objective priority. The theoretically correct play is usually not what actually works in your own elo. Oftentimes, it's something that may seem out of the ordinary, like split pushing as an ADC that will give you way more agency. We teach you the correct way to play League like everyone else does, but also the adaptations that actually work in your elo, so you'll always have multiple great ideas for what to do to win games. We're constantly producing and updating our strategies with players getting better, so SkillCapped is by far the best platform for learning League of Legends. We're so confident that if you don't climb 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a full refund. Our service has zero risk with the potential to save you tons of time in your climb, so make sure to give us a try. This new Shen build ended up gaining some traction towards the end of last season, and it's really good for this season as well, but is still quite underrated right now. Xpedu is the one who originally popularized this setup, as he has come up with some really interesting builds on his Twitter or X over the past few months. So the build revolves around rushing Deadman's Plate, and if we look at the data behind this right now, there is no other rush item that is winning more than Deadman's on Shen. Heartsteel is the closest, but Deadman's is still winning over 1% more. Deadman's has just been a very undervalued item on a lot of champs for a very long time now, and Shen works extremely well with it. Shen is a champion who needs those more extended fights to win out, so you're getting a lot of value from the Deadman's passive proc. The movement speed is also something that sets Deadman's apart from all other rush options, as you gain 4% from stats, and then even more movement speed when you stack up the passive. After building Deadman's, you go into Hollow Radiance second, and this 2-item core offers up a really good mix of durability and damage. The rune page finding the best success on Shen right now consists of Grasp, with Shield Bash, Second Wind, and Overgrowth, while Biscuits and Approach Velocity are for secondaries. There are a few AP bruisers who are finding good success with the new item Bloodletter's Curse, but one who's excelling even more is Gwen. Bloodletter slotted in third on Gwen is going to work extremely well for you in games where you're playing against a few magic resist stackers. The passive on Bloodletters grants you ramping magic resist shred, and with Gwen being able to deal so much consistent damage, she can stack up the passive really fast and take full advantage of the max 30% shred. The item offering up 350 health is really nice for Gwen as well. When playing into tankier comps, you're going to need to outlast them in extended fights, and if you go something like Rabadon's third, then you are a lot more vulnerable if you end up getting CC'd. So the complete core build that you should try revolves around a Nashor's Tooth Rush into Riftmaker second and Bloodletter's Curse third. For Gwen's rune page, look to run Conqueror with Presence of Mind, Alacrity, and Last Stand, followed by Bone Plating and Overgrowth for secondaries. There's a new Kayn build that has made its way into meta that's giving him a lot more relative strength right now. Karasmai, who's one of the best Kayn players in the world, is the one who came up with this one. Voltaic Cyclo Sword remains the rush item, as that has been pretty standard on Kayn for a while, but from then on out, everything else is unique. Sterak's Gauge is the second item, and then Spirit Visage is third. So it's a much more durable build and provides Kayn with a ton of added shielding and healing in the mid to late game. Once you have both Spirit Visage and Sterak's completed, you're going to be getting an absolutely massive shield from Sterak's, as the passive on Spirit Visage amps, shields, and heals by 25%. On top of this, the healing that you get from your R will be massive as well, not just because of Spirit Visage, but because of the way you'll set up your rune page. The new rune Axiom Arcanist not only provides your R with more damage, but it also increases healing effects as well. So especially if you're playing into enemy comps that lack burst damage, you're going to be an absolute menace with this build in extended fights. And of course, this build is for red Kayn in specific, as it's just way better than blue Kayn for the current meta. Here's a look at the full rune page as you take Conqueror with Triumph, Haste, and Last Stand, followed by Axiom Arcanist and Transcendence for secondaries. Nunu is a really underrated jungler for this new season with all the added priority put on objectives, and there's a build that is giving him even more power. Instead of going for a straight up tank build with Sunfire as the rush, look to drop Sunfire completely and start rushing Liandry's. Liandry's gives you a lot more early to mid game snowball power with Nunu, as he's a champ that can really accelerate a lead once he gets the ball rolling. Deadman's Plate is going to be the second purchase, as it's insanely underrated on Nunu as an armor pickup instead of Thornmail. And then rounding out the core is Abyssal Mask, and like we noted in the intro, the reworked Abyssal Mask is one of the most OP items in the game right now. This build is just way more solo carry oriented, as you have so much more damage than if you were to go full tank, but you're still quite durable as well. Even though Deadman's and Abyssal provide more offensive passives, their base stats offer up a solid amount of tank stats, so it's the best of both worlds. The best rune page to go alongside this build consists of Phase Rush, Rush with Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, and Water Walking, while Triumph and Haste are for secondaries. There's a very strong but underplayed rune setup going around on Kassadin right now that you need to take advantage of if you're playing the champ. Electrocute is pretty bad on cast now due to Eyeball Collection being removed from the domination tree, and instead, you should be looking to run Comet. You're not running Comet because the rune itself became any stronger. You're taking it because it gives you access to a much stronger primary tree than what domination has to offer. On top of this, it opens things up for you to run the rune combo of Axiom Arcanist and Ultimate Hunter. With Kassadin R being on such a short cooldown in the mid game, you get a lot of value from the damage amp that Arcanist provides, and you're loving the cooldown reduction on takedowns as well. Just looking at the data right now, it's actually really insane to see the power gap between Electrocute and Comet as keystone pickups. Cast players who run Comet are winning 53% of the time, as opposed to Electrocute players who are way down at 48%. This just goes to show how detrimental the removal of Eyeball Collection was to the domination tree, and it's not something that you should be taking on your cast any longer. For the build on Kassadin, you really can't go wrong with a Rod of Ages Rush into Archangel's 2nd and Malignant's 3rd. There's a new build that has been popping up on Silas for the new season, and it revolves around slotting in Bloodletters as a core pickup. The entire build is quite unique, as Blackfire Torch is the rush, Riftmaker is 2nd, and then Bloodletters rounds it out 3rd. This build is going to work extremely well for you in games where the enemy comp has more fighters or tanks than squishies. Riftmaker and Bloodletters both provide passives that ramp up over time, so it's a build that is going to thrive the most in extended fights. Extended fights are what you're going to need to take down more beefy champs, so the build works perfect in that regard. The mana that you get from Blackfire helps out a lot when playing into more tanky comps as well, because you may need multiple rotations of spells to take them down, and if you're playing the more standard Rocket Belt Rush, you get no mana at all from that setup, so if fights last for a long duration, you can run into mana issues. Rune Page will be Conqueror with Presence of Mind, Haste, and Last Stand, followed by Second Wind and Overgrowth for secondaries. We've seen the Hullbreaker builds popping up on a couple of ADCs as of recent, but a champ who's seeing much less play with the item while performing incredibly well is Zeri. It's not just Hullbreaker that is unique about this Zeri build either, as you're going for experimental Hexblade as the rush, so you're really leaning into the more durable aspect of the build. Second item will remain the same as always with Hurricane, but Hexblade is your rush, and then Hullbreaker is what you grab 3rd. Of course, you're not dealing as much damage with this build compared to crit, however, the added survivability is often way more valuable for solo queue. You get 450 health from Hexblade and then another 500 health from Hullbreaker, so you're actually really more like a bruiser when going this build than a traditional ADC. This allows for Zeri to be much more proactive in fights, and she can bait enemies into taking bad fights really easily because they're so used to Zeri being a squishy ADC. The best rune page of this build consists of Lethal Tempo, followed by Triumph, Alacrity, and Cutdown, while Free Boots and Biscuits are for secondaries. A build that has started to become more popular on Kai'Sa for this patch that actually has the highest win rate right now consists of building Essence Reaver as a core item. The entire build is really interesting as you rush Static Shiv, go Essence Reaver 2nd, and then Shadow Flame 3rd. The big pro to going for this setup is that it provides a lot more upfront damage. The standard Kraken with Rageblade and Nashor's Core is a lot more about ramping up throughout an extended fight, while Shiv with ER hits way harder upfront. If you're in a game where the entire enemy comp is squishy, then that's where this Shiv with ER and Shadow Flame build will thrive the most. When paired up with a hard engaged CC support, the build gains even more value because greater upfront damage to follow up when their catch plays is often way more valuable than consistent DPS for solo queue. The only downside to going this build is that you don't get enough attack speed for your E evolve. In this case, going for Sork Shoes instead of Greaves is what you will want to prioritize. It's also Press the Attack that you should be taking for the Keystone Rune in place of Lethal Tempo so that your burst strength is even higher. This new Senna build is providing her with a lot more power for this new season as it consists of running Hurricane as a core pickup. Where Hurricane is going to gain a lot of value is in games where the enemy comp are majority melee champions. In a grouped up team fight with melee champs all bunched up together is where Hurricane can really shine. The bolts from the Hurricane passive actually have really good synergy with Senna's kit because they will proc when she uses her Q. The bolts from Hurricane will also proc the Black Cleaver passive, so the synergy between the two items is really strong. You don't even need to be directly targeting a specific champion and can end up getting full stacks of Black Cleaver on them just because of the Hurricane bolts. For Senna's rune page, look to grab Airy with Mana Flow, Transcendence, and Scorch, while Font of Life and Revitalize are for secondaries. There's a new Bard build that has been gaining traction in this new season, and it involves him abusing two of the most OP tank items in the game. Deadman's Plate is the rush, and that's standard stuff, but Abyssal Mask is what you're slotting in second now. The Deadman's with Abyssal combo is just perfect for Bard because it gives him a ton of tankiness while still offering some offensive power as well. The damage proc from Deadman's passive combined with the damage amp from Abyssal amplifies the catch power of Bard, while the durability lets him play extremely aggressive, getting right up in the middle of fights and auto-attacking very frequently to proc his passive. The Bloodsong passive gives you a damage amp as well, so when combined with Abyssal Mask, you are really helping to provide your team with more follow-up damage on catch plays that you make. The best rune page for Bard consists of Guardian with Font of Life, Conditioning, and Overgrowth, followed by Free Boots and Biscuits for secondaries. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top-tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So that's going to be all for our latest update on 10 of the most OP new builds for solo queue. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.